Well, this was a very low energy performance. He's recovering from COVID, but the actual way it was delivered reminds us of why he's actually decided to step down. He looked old, frail, lonely in that big office. And yet his words didn't tell us anything we didn't know. He didn't mention any hint that he was mentally incapacitated or too old. He just talked about the need to pass the torch to a new generation. It was a speech that actually was full of self-congratulations. There was, again, no indication that actually he had been forced out by his party, but instead he presented himself as the selfless person who took the big decision for the sake of the country rather than his own personal ambition. He was someone who actually only mentioned Kamala Harris in a sentence to give her praise, but instead used the occasion to talk about his achievements and about the threat to democracy presented by Donald Trump, without, of course, mentioning him by age. So it was quite a strange speech in many respects because he's not stepping down as president. He's got 6 months to go, and yet he said now is the chance, that the time to pass the torch to a new generation. Now, but not really now, actually 6 months' time. So it was an odd statement contrasting his ambitions and his burnishing of his reputation with what was a very frail and lackluster performance.
Yeah, you can really, as you point out, see the deterioration over the last couple of months. It must have been very hard for him, but regardless of that now, it's in the past, but the impact it's had on the mood of the campaign has been immediate.
Oh, completely. This completely upends the whole election. What they had after the debate was a campaign in turmoil. Well, all the numbers and even safe democratic states were going down and showed no prospect of recovery. There seemed no strategy for him to recover. And in fact, actually, numbers for watching his press conferences went up. It became a blood sport watching for the next gaffe from President Biden. But taking him out of the race changes that calculation enormously. So instead of having two very unpopular old men competing for the office, the dynamics have changed entirely with a generational change by a woman in her 50s, a woman who actually represents a much more of the demographic mix of America, and a woman. So she is appealing to Latinos, to blacks, to women, to young people, and she brings energy and vibrance and enthusiasm to the race, and indeed has the opportunity to draw a line under the previous administration and bring forward her own agenda. So she's much more comfortable talking about abortion, for example, than the Catholic Joe Biden, who was never quite comfortable with the issue, even though he respected a woman's right to choose. She is someone who can bring a different dimension to it, talking about the need to resist the agenda of Trump and Harris on a whole variety of issues. That phrase, "we're not going back," suggesting that what Trump and Vance want to do is to take America back to the 1950s. And she is putting forward this energetic program, and that'll be honed over the next 2 or 3 months in a way that actually allows America to actually embrace an enthusiastic forward-looking agenda rather than the backward-looking agenda which she's portraying the Republicans as doing.
Yeah. How important is it for her to stay positive? And it is interesting, it does look like Trump is not quite yet sure how to manage Kamala. He keeps mispronouncing her name almost deliberately. Deliberately, yeah. It is sort of it is quite extraordinary. He is attacking her, though, as a real liberal. How careful does she have to be? You talk about her wanting to set her own agenda, but if she makes it too big, she could really overstep the mark.
Yeah, I think, first of all, on the Trump point, I mean, she is almost the ideal candidate for him because she'll bring out his worst tendencies of misogyny and racism. And we've already seen that in a whole variety of ways in which he deliberately mispronounces her name as a way to make her other, to make her foreign. Because for him, of course, in the same way that he attacked Biden as not being, of Obama, of not being born in America, for him, the idea of American as a white person, and that makes it difficult for him to get that tone right. But in terms of her record, she will actually be able to distance herself, I think, from the position she took in the 2020 campaign, partly because time has gone on. And if America can forgive Donald Trump for actually bragging about grabbing women's genitalia and for being found liable for sexual assault, then they can be forgiven for some of the positions she's taken in the past in terms of as she lays out her new strategy and her new positions, which are more centrist, more corporate friendly than actually the Vance agenda that he's putting forward. And therefore, you're seeing a switch in corporate America's financing of going towards Harris as the more centrist, more reliable, more continuity candidate than actually the populist, particularly Vance aspects of the Republican agenda, which are seen as anti-capitalist in many of their aspects.
Yeah, it's true. It's actually now that pick, which everybody was sort of lauding last week, is now like, oh, maybe this wasn't the best decision, but she's yet to pick her VP. Let's talk about Benjamin Netanyahu, because this is a sort of contentious issue, and some of the scenes we saw outside Congress were ugly. But the truth of the matter is there are many people in America who feel the government has been far too soft on Netanyahu and the war that he is prosecuting.
Yeah, and indeed, what Harris allows is an opportunity to draw a line under the Biden administration. Even though she's part of that administration, she has been kept in line by the White House. She has wanted to take a much more critical stance towards Israel than Biden wanted her to do. And indeed, they've actually forced her to actually change her speeches. And you can imagine that actually she will be saying in private, okay, I'm still vice president, and therefore I can't deviate too much from the Biden line for the next 6 months. But be rest assured that when I am president, I will take a harder line on Israel than the Biden administration. So that allows her to have it both ways and actually allows her not to be forced to take a position too much being critical of Netanyahu, yet at the same time indicating that if she is returned to the White House, then she will be in a position to take that harder line. So in a sense, actually, that allows her to actually go out there and attract people who are much more concerned about America's support for Israel than the Biden administration has been doing, and that will allow her to actually hopefully navigate what is quite a tricky area in democratic politics.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It'd be nice to be a fly on the wall when she meets Netanyahu, but as you say, she's got that opportunity to just not necessarily state her case too quickly. All right, good to see you, David. What a couple of weeks, huh?
Extraordinary. I mean, what you couldn't imagine the last month that we've had in terms of the ups and downs of American politics, and now the assassination attempt looks ancient history, even though it was only 2 weeks ago.
Exactly. Good to see you. Thanks so much.
Okay, cheers.